I wanted to do a video on how to remove stubborn brake drums. I'm working on my 1964 Thunderbird convertible. The car's been sitting for a while, and the brakes are locked on. When it was on a jack, I was unable to turn the wheel or the drum by hand. So I knew the brakes were locked on. My assumption was that the shoes were rusted to the inside of the drum. Of course, I didn't know that because I couldn't see inside, but it just wouldn't turn. So first thing I did was back off the adjuster, which is down there, star brake adjuster. Back that off all the way, and still didn't have any luck. And then I removed the rubber brake hose off the back to release any pressure that might be in the brake fluid pressure that might be in the wheel cylinder, and that didn't make a difference. So the car wasn't running at the time, so I made a bracket for the front, attached it to my tow bar, and I pulled the car in and out of the garage with my truck a couple times. And initially the wheel would slide, but then it actually broke free and would turn and roll while I rolled the car. But whenever I would bring it back in, jack the car up, I still was unable to turn the wheel. So could not get the brake drum off. So the first thing I did was purchase the puller from Harbor Freight. This is their big 8-inch puller, which is actually not big enough for the brake drum. So you take the sidebars off and add some chain, and that would allow you to put the puller on the brake drum. I was a little worried about damaging the spindle nut, so what I did is I went to Advanced Auto. I bought an extra spindle nut, and they said it would fit the car, but it actually does not turn onto the car. It turns on a couple turns and then locks up. So what I did was turn it on a little bit, and then use the original spindle nut to lock it in so that the puller would fit in there and hopefully not damage the threads on the spindle. If it would damage the threads on the spindle when I took the original nut off, the idea was it would help clean up the threads and fix them. But that wasn't an issue. So when I would use the puller, still would not pull the brakes off. So the next thing somebody on YouTube suggested was to take the little springs that hold the drums on, and that way the shoes would come off, or that hold the shoes on, and that way the shoes would come off with the drum. They were using a grinder to grind off the heads from the back plate. I actually found out that 2 axes with a cold chisel, they broke right off. Put the puller on again, and again it would pull the bottom out, but it wouldn't pull the whole drum off. And it would pull it out to the point where I was worried that the nuts were actually going to hit the bearing race inside the brake drum, and I didn't want to damage the bearing race. So pulled the car in and out a couple more times, and the wheel would make several revolutions, and I would thought that would have torn up the springs or anything. Didn't affect them. And bring it back in, still could not turn the wheel. So I was about ready to give up. Some people actually use grinders and just cut the brake drum. So as a last ditch effort, I took tapcons. Tapcon, and screwed it into the back where the little holes go to get the light, and screwed it to the brake drums. So I anchored the brake drums to the back plate, so they could not move forward when I used the drum puller. Luckily for me, the tapcons were too small in diameter, but they did catch these little clips here and wedge in there, so it did wedge the brake drums on. I used the tapcons that I had. I only wanted to use ones that had a nut on the end, because I knew that trying to thread them into the steel, a screw head like a Phillips head would just strip out. So I did that, anchored the shoes to the back plate, and then put the drum on, and lo and behold, the top of the drum started coming off, and I could see it sliding over top of the brake shoe. Look down and behind it, and I could see the brake shoe. So then I just used a pry bar and just sort of worked around, prying between the drum and the backing plate, and was finally able to get the drum off. And here's the drum. It actually doesn't look too bad. There's really no ridge in there. There's a couple minor rust spots, but for the most part, the drum looks a lot better than I thought it would. So anyway, like I said, there's some other videos on how people try to get brake drums off, but I never saw one where they used a tapcon to go in the back and anchor the brake drum to the plate to keep the shoes from coming out and wedging the brake drum as it comes off. So that was the last ditch effort for me, and it worked. So I hope if somebody else runs into this problem, it might be something you want to think about and give it a try.